6:30 in the morning in the town of Ashington, Northumberland. A miner leaves for work. Whilst talks begin tomorrow to end the strike, he's been back for months, one of the first to return. But this is no ordinary miner. He's John Cunningham, the branch secretary of the local NUM, a full-time union official. And in a town which was solidly behind the strike, his defection has caused an outcry. To some, he's the worst kind of traitor, to others, a hero. 3 streets away, in the densely packed terraces of this town, another family is stirring. Another miner is setting off. For him, a very different sort of day. His walk through the icy streets will lead him to the local headquarters of the NUM, where he'll join others of the town's 2,000 miners who've sworn not to go back until the bitter end. January has been their worst time. After 10 months on strike and with little hope of victory now, they drive to a picket line that each day gets smaller and more dispirited. By the time John Cunningham reaches his bus, the streets of Ashington are alive with returning miners. They walk in small groups for safety, some hooded to conceal their identities from striking workmates. 20 minutes later, under police guard and in armoured buses, the branch secretary and the 800 men he's led back to work arrive at the pit. They ready themselves for the verbal and physical assault of the pickets, none more so than John Cunningham. The man he passes on the picket line, the man who each day leads the attack on John Cunningham, is his own son. 3 months ago, father and son could not have been more close. Now they're divided by police, by principle, and by an implacable hatred.
It's a terrible decision I had to make. It split my family, but I had to do it. I had to lead the miners back to sanity.
It'll be hard to forgive him for what he's done to me. I think he's betrayed not only me, but the union.
I think it's tragic, really. It's dreadful. Not only to my family, to every family in the community, I would say. Every family up and down the country's been split by this stupid strike that should never have happened, really.
Tonight, World in Action looks at the miners' dispute. Not the one in today's headlines, but the one that will continue in miners' homes long after this strike has ended. Families and whole communities all over Britain have been split apart, perhaps for years to come. We tell the story of one such place, Ashington, a town described as being in a state of civil war, torn apart by the actions of father and son. Like most other miners in Ashington, the two Cunninghams work at Ellington Colliery. 3 miles outside the town, it's the jewel in the crown of the northeast coalfield. It's the largest undersea coal mine in the world. All its coal comes from tunnels running 6 miles out under the North Sea. Production at Ellington is high. They even managed to break output records during the miners' overtime ban, and the full wage packets make a contented pit. Before the strike, John Louis Cunningham was highly regarded in the town. He'd spent a lifetime in the pit, and when he was elected branch secretary of the union 8 years ago, it was a popular choice among the miners.
Well, he was very well liked, good character, full of fun, and well respected by the people.
He was very, very popular as a man, Louis Cunningham.
It's basically how he got a secretary's job. Good worker, regular tender, you name it, that was it.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
John Cunningham saw himself as one of the old school of trade union officials, on first-name terms with his men, knowing their family backgrounds and problems, and not concerned with high-level politics.
I've always put my men first. I believe that a union is there for wages and conditions and nothing to do with politics.
Cunningham's eldest son, John, was also a miner, was also on the committee of the NUM, but there the similarity ended. He's a former grammar school boy, highly political, a disciple of Arthur Scargill.
I've always regarded myself as being a militant supporter, you know, left-winger. You know, that's the way I feel.
And all Ellington miners were branded as militants early last year, after the notorious incident when Coal Board Chairman Ian McGregor was knocked unconscious. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. Ellington was moderate through and through, as was confirmed last March when the national strike began.
I think the men were 100%, except for about 10, to go through any pickets and continue working.
Did that include other union officials here?
It was unanimous, and even the chairman stated he would lead the men through the picket lines.
But 3 days later, the Ellington miners, arriving by coach, were confronted by flying pickets. They retreated and agreed not to cross picket lines. From that moment, the strike was on at Ellington.
Well, I thought it was disgusting because, you see, I've always believed that in a strike situation we would get a national ballot. I mean, the national ballot is there to protect the weak from the strong. All along, they've been denied this ballot, which is the right of every member of the NUM.
For 8 months, Ashington stayed out. Whatever the initial reluctance, once a national strike had begun, loyalty to the union demanded nothing less. Ashington is a town built on coal, said to be the largest pit village in the world. 3,000 of its houses are owned by the NCB, and the smoke of 10,000 chimneys hangs in a shroud above it. At the pit gates, few dared to risk the wrath of pickets like these. But as the weeks turned to months, Ashington's miners began to feel real hardship. In the town, house after house was up for sale. Some 30 marriages had broken up. Winter, which had promised victory through power cuts, instead brought only the cold. To keep warm, hundreds of striking miners had to turn to the freezing sea to scavenge for sea coal, the waste dumped from the pit when it was working and now washed up onto the shore at high tide. It's like gravel, but it burns. And for the miners who produced the coal in the first place, it was perhaps the most humiliating hardship of all. The free NCB coal they'd taken for granted while working now seemed as far away as the beginning of the strike itself. It was on this beach last November that the incident occurred which brought to a head all John Cunningham's fears about the strike.
A striking miner died in hospital early today after being trapped under huge pieces of stone while digging for coal on a Northumbrian beach. 48-year-old Frederick Taylor of Chichester Close, Ashington, was digging close to the water's edge on an isolated stretch of beach near Siggins.
He was
Quarry.
a very nice man. He was a man very shy. So I went down to see his widow, and the feeling was such that I made my mind up that I was going to do what I was going to do. That I was going to go back to work. I had separations, divorces, men coming in suicidal. I was shocked at some of the things that were told to me. A man standing looking at the sea and feeling like walking into the sea and various things like that. Young people coming in and saying their wives had left them. The hardship and the money worries. That was, I couldn't recall all the hardship cases.
How did you feel about that? You were union secretary, you'd been on strike for 8 months, you'd been well liked in this mining community. How did you feel about that?
Well, I felt terrible. I thought, well, someone has to do something to try to break this terrible thing that's happening to us. And I thought, well, if I could sort of get them back to some sort of sanity.
Secretly, John Cunningham wrote out all his misgivings about the strike in the form of a statement, which he would read to a packed union meeting that Saturday. With this dramatic gesture, he hoped to persuade the men to forget their fears and lead them in a massive return to work.
What effect did his speech at the union meeting have on the community here?
Disastrous, really, like, because when he eventually did get up at the meeting, at the beginning of the meeting, he stated, follow me on the back of the road to sanity. And it was a shock to everyone, you know. It really took back by it, simple as that.
that day he read the statement out, I looked at his son, and, you know, it was heartbreaking, really, because his son knew nothing about it.
I wasn't expecting it. I had no inkling that it was going to happen. And then I sort of rallied up the courage to get up and speak, you know. Now, I can't remember exactly what I said, because it was, you know, because I was really worked up. And I hadn't prepared, obviously I hadn't prepared to say anything. I was just speaking my mind.
But you attacked your father?
Oh yeah, I attacked his actions, you know. I thought it was, you know, I condemned him for what he'd done. I said that I would still be on strike, supporting the strike. I would still be on the picket line. And I appealed to the meeting not to take any notice of what he'd done, but to remain solid, remain firm with the union and still support the union.
But how did you feel attacking your own father, to whom you were very close, at this union meeting?
Well, you know, I felt very awkward, you know. It was something that I've never wanted to do before my life. I never have done before my life. But I felt that it was so serious a crime, what he did, that I had to get up and speak forcefully against it.
You knew that your decision would be of great embarrassment to your son, presumably.
Yes, I would say so. My son's been committed from the beginning. He's an active supporter of the strike. He's a young man.
He lives 3 streets away.
Three streets away.
Didn't you feel you ought to at least tell him or forewarn him?
No, I never. I didn't think it was any of his business because he was he's a committee man, and I thought if I had discussed it with anyone, they would have stopped me having the meeting.
The effect of John Cunningham's decision on the strike was catastrophic, and in the days following it, nearly 400 men went with him back to work. John Cunningham had split his family and split a town. Neighbour was not speaking to neighbour. Men who before were friends or workmates could no longer look each other in the eyes. There were attacks on both working and striking miners. John Cunningham himself was put under 24-hour police guard. Ashington, once such a friendly, close-knit community, had been split apart. Nowhere in the weeks after the miners first started returning to work was that bitter divide more sharply focused than on the daily picket line.
Get the wood chopped up.
But today, with nearly half the miners back, and with tomorrow's talks signalling the end of the strike, the pickets do little more than raise a symbolic jeer at the returning men. The only comfort now is breakfast at the Union House after picket duty. For many, an egg butty will be their only hot food of the day.
And the name is George.
In the next room, the queue for hardship money grows longer. Many of the single men have to survive on the union's £5 weekly handout.
Right, thank you.
One office Scoville. There's only one office Scoville. Everybody.
Even before news of the latest talks, strikers' morale was at an all-time low. To revive their spirits, a strikers benefit at a local labour club.
Thanks very much. We have to be honest. At this time, after 45 weeks on strike, the morale of the strikers isn't at its highest point. And we have to say that. And that's not, nobody in this room should be surprised at that. We've had 45 weeks of hardship and struggle. The miners, their wives and their families, that's what we've had to face. And after 45 weeks, still the Coal Board, backed by the Tory government, are refusing to budge an inch. They want to smash our union, they want to smash the NUM because they took a red face in 1972 and in 1974. They want to break the NUM, and they think that'll pave the way for smashing the other trade unions. That's why they're taking on the miners. And I think if we can continue, if we can last out on this, then I think we will have a victory. And perhaps in a few weeks' time, we'll be able to really celebrate something. Thanks very much.
But next day, it's back again to the picket line. More snow has fallen overnight. It's even colder. Otherwise, nothing has changed.
Hey, cameras, get that!
Come on, you pig!
Get this up! Oh, camera, get me!
This is now the reality of picketing in the northeast. The pickets can't stop the buses going in or the coal coming out. It's all an increasingly futile ritual. And if tomorrow's talks come to nothing, most of the miners here can't go on much longer.
Well, the hardship's tremendous at the moment, you know. That's what we have to think of. We have men who owe £2,000 and £3,000. You know, a few of my friends, their mortgage owe £2,000. They've got to sell their houses. You know, the hardship's really getting at people.
Meanwhile, at his father's house, there's plenty of food on the table again now that he's back in work. But more important, says John Cunningham, is his peace of mind.
I was rather amazed when I went back, because every man that's working, it's just like a load had been lifted from his mind. It was like a weight. It was like he had lost all the pressures and the worries as soon as he was back at work. And to see the smiling faces, that was really compensation enough.
Where'd you get the money from?
You, Dad.
Hard up, Stu.
Now you're back at work and everything, you know.
But John Cunningham's newly found peace of mind is far from complete. Although he lives just down the road from his son John, he hasn't set eyes on him since his decision to go back to work 3 months ago. Christmas passed without a word. John Cunningham is upset and puzzled by his son's behaviour.
I thought he would be a bit like myself. I think had the positions been reversed, I wouldn't have done what he has done to me. I wouldn't have done it to my father.
What was your relationship with your son John before the strike?
Very good father and son relationship. We got on very well together. He was a good son.
You haven't seen or spoken to him
haven't
since
seen
you
him, I spoke to him, I telephoned him.
And yet you live just 3 streets away?
Yes, three streets along there, yeah.
Have you ever seen him?
No, I haven't seen him. My wife's seen him, but I haven't seen him.
What happened when you saw him, Mrs. Cunningham?
Well, I saw him and I thought he hadn't seen me because he walked straight by. And I stopped, you know. And I didn't call his name because I wasn't sure whether he had actually seen me or he hadn't seen me. He was talking to a friend and he walked by and into a shop. So I just walked home, and when I mentioned it to my other son, Patrick, he said, Mother, he wouldn't do that. He hasn't seen you.
I've seen my mother once since the strike started.
What did you say?
Well, I didn't speak to her. You know, in my opinion, my mother's been... She's had as much to do with my father going back as anything else. And I walked straight past her, you know. And that was very... I felt terrible. You know? I can't really describe the way that I felt.
What do you feel about John walking straight past you?
I feel terribly sad about it. We were very close, and I always used to take John's side of every argument. I've always sort of been in preference. I don't know whether it was because he was the eldest or what, but...
She clearly is very sad about what's happened.
Yeah, well, she's mainly, or at least partially responsible for what's happened. So if she is feeling sad, then the sadness that she feels, she's fetched it on herself.
Well, I think that he just expected me. He was in this house the day before his dad made his decision, and he would know that I would know about it, or he would have a good idea I would know about it. And he probably thought I should have told him, but I couldn't tell him. I couldn't tell him because he would have probably told the rest of the committee. And then my husband wouldn't have been able to make his decision.
It seems
and my husband has to think of his members as well as his own son. And he could see all this poverty and everything. He had to do something about it. Even at the cost of his thankless job, he had to do something. I didn't think he would go to this length. I mean, I knew he'd be angry about what had happened, but I think loyalty to your family should come first. And I think that he should have stood by my husband, because he's had a very good father. No one ever had a better father. And he's been a good son always. And he's an educated man, and he's an intelligent lad, but he hasn't the wisdom of his father. His dad is a real miner, and he has all the down-to-earth common sense of a miner. And my husband's not he knows the majority of miners are not politically motivated, where John is. He's militant and he's committed.
Don't you think some people might feel that you're perhaps a little hard? Even though you feel so strongly about the issues of the strike?
You see, the only alternative that I've got is to say, well, what my father's done has been quite all right, you know? And that would be absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I would be equally as guilty of betraying all these other people who've been on strike as well. That's a position it would put me in. There's no halfway situations here.
A few days ago, matters between father and son came to a head. The union opened up its now disused welfare club for a special meeting. Its purpose was to get rid of the man they regard as the biggest scab of all.
This is about the most important meeting that this branch has ever had. I'm expecting a big turnout. I think it'll be a very well attended meeting. And also, it's a historic meeting, really, for a vote of no confidence in a union secretary, you know, especially during a strike.
The meeting was short and to the point. It was told that John Cunningham's record as union secretary had been abysmal. All 510 men present voted to have him sacked, including his own son. For John Cunningham, this is potentially a double blow, not only being stripped of his title, but now his actual livelihood threatened. He drives off to his solicitors, determined to fight the union through the courts if necessary.
The decision has made me very angry, because I've always done the best I can for my members. I've worked for all members, not just for strikers. I've worked for everybody.
Now, your son was one of those who voted for you to be expelled. What do you feel about that?
Well, I feel very strongly about it. I think blood is supposed to be thicker than water, and I think he should have supported me. At the very least, he should have abstained.
Just as the divisions between workers and strikers seem to be widening, so too does the gulf between father and son.
What would it take? What would your father need to do to have you forgive him?
Well, I can't imagine him coming back out on strike now.
Is that the price?
That would, aye.
Well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't go back on strike once I've made a decision.
Even if it was to...
Yes, I couldn't do that. I would still have to stay as I am. I've made my decision, and I'll have to stick with that.
Surely when the strike is all over, surely that's the time to forgive and forget, isn't it?
Well, I don't think that the strike will be over as soon as we're going back to work. I think the strike, it's going to take a long time for things to get back to normal. I don't think things will ever be the same again, really. And as I say, it's going to be very difficult. It seems to be getting harder, not easier, for there to be any reconciliation. Again, I have to say, my wife's already said that my mother continues to send letters into the newspapers, the local newspapers, calling the union, and vitriolic attacks on the union and that. And I have to take them as personal attacks on me as well. She knows quite clearly where I stand and that. I didn't write letters to the newspapers criticising her, or people like her. And so that makes things even more difficult.
Do you think you'll ever speak to your parents again?
Well, at the present time, I can't say there'll be any reconciliation at all. That's my view,
From what you're saying, it sounds as if you don't love them anymore, as a son might, or should.
I'm saying that because of what they have done, it's making it very difficult for both me and my wife to have any contact with them.
Last week, as the new talks to try and end the strike were announced, Ellington Colliery produced coal for the first time in 11 months. Regardless of the outcome of these talks due to take place tomorrow, for many in Ashington the strike is now over in all but name. But for the Cunningham family and countless others like them, in countless other mining communities, the strike in another sense may never really end.
Ashington used to be a very close-knit community and everybody's very friendly. Now there's really hostile atmosphere about and people are frightened now, and in a way it's a bit like civil war but without guns, fortunately without guns, because the community's been really absolutely cracked. And even when this dispute's settled, I mean it'll never be settled in one sense, even when, you know, when everything gets back to normal, if it can ever do, there'll be repercussions going on well long after that, you know, people won't forget.